everybody, welcome back to the 2023 Liverpool Pokémon Regional Championships. My name's Ben Kiraku, joined here by the wonderful Jamie Boyd, and we're here for round 5 of this incredible championships.
Yeah, absolutely. Just about the halfway point at this point. We do have those 9 rounds going into the 5th round now. After we got past this one, we are going to be over halfway into the tournament at this point. So yeah, it's been very exciting so far.
It has indeed. We've seen some really great matches. We've got to showcase some players that we don't usually get to showcase in these sort of tournaments, especially with the number of players here. We're really excited to be able to see as many of the players as possible. And we've got some more really exciting matches coming up, and I'm incredibly excited to be seeing the next round that we've got.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be featuring Bas van der Heijden versus Markus Stadter in this next round. 2 fantastic players going forward. Markus Stadter needs no introduction, really. He's been one of the, again, I keep mentioning the word veteran, and veteran is still going to apply very much here as well. Markus, 2-time national champion, top 4 in the world back in 2016. Very, very good accomplishments. Indeed.
He's just one of those players that keeps coming back for more and keeps showing us why he is one of the most consistent players in the world, and of course his home nation, Germany.
Yes, absolutely. And the Netherlands coming out here in full force as well. It seems still a 4-0 coming for Baz as well. So yeah, that's a really good showing. 4-0 is exactly where you want to be in this format. If you get one more win, you're over halfway into the tournament, still undefeated.
Exactly that, and playing for the Netherlands in various forms of competitions in the grassroots scene, certainly, as well as managing some other sort of team tournaments as well. Definitely a staple in the VGC community, and one definitely to watch out for here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be very curious to see what the teams are going to be as well for these ones, because at this point in the tournament, you're not really going to have any dead weight Pokemon at all, because if you're still consistently winning the games, at this point you're still undefeated, then the team is starting to work out. It's at least for the start of the tournament, something is going right. So it's going to be interesting to see what that something right is going to be.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, you don't see these sort of players making too many misplays. They've got their teams really set up well in this open team sheet format. And, you know, just doing things as consistently as possible. You can see there both of these players setting up and getting ready to go. On the left there is Bas, and of course on the right is our resident Markus.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be a great match coming forward here. It seems like we are once again featuring the Pelipper and Palafin combination coming out from Bas's side of the field. So a very, very strong showing that we've seen in the previous rounds as well. Going to be able to get those massive, massive water type attacks coming from the Palafin once you have switched into that hero form.
But a water form of a different type on Marcus's side, but not really unrecognizable. It is going to be that Dondozo Tatsugiri combination coming out from Markus, paired as well with some Pokemon that we sometimes see in a little bit more of a combination. We've got that Armor Rouge coming out, but no Indeedee being the usual counterpart to it.
Yeah, that means there's going to be no expanding force on this Armor Rouge instead. Just going to be opting for just the regular old Psychic here, but still going to be absolutely good on this Armor Rouge for sure. Still going to get access to the same type attack bonus with the Psychic typing and the Psychic attack. Still going to be able to set the Trick Room perfectly fine as well.
Certainly is. I'm looking forward to actually getting to see some of these Palafins really going for it in these sort of matches. We've seen a little bit previously, I believe Miguel Martí de la Torre was running a Palafin in one of the previous rounds, but didn't really get going and come out to its full potential. So we'll see if Bas can give us a little bit of a highlight of why this Pokemon has become so popular in the metagame.
Yeah, absolutely. And something to note about the Palafin here, it is not running Flip Turn. In order to get the 0 to hero, you're just going to have to go for a straight-up, old-fashioned switch out into the Pokemon in the back. No option to go for Flip Turn to flip yourself out. It's opting to run Protect instead. Palafins previously, it seemed like they didn't have space for Protect. You want to be going for the Wave Crash for the most amount of damage you could possibly do. Yep. You want to be going for the Jet Punch because then that's the priority move. You often do want to go for the Flip Turn so that you can actually do damage while you're activating your 0 to hero. And we're going to be running Haze here as the tech for opposing Dondozos, which happens to be across the field from him on Marcus' side of the field. So going to be a very interesting thing to look for in that match, because hazing away the Dondozo boost is exactly what you want to be doing.
really is, and especially when you have that sort of backup there with, Salamence going for Draco Meteors, especially boosted by the Life Orb, which is on Barz's side of the field. Of course, that Golden Go is actually going to be opting for Choice Specs and Thunder, which I'm really excited to see. We've seen already some Thunderbolt Golden Go really doing quite a lot of work here, but Thunder's just like that next level up, even more power, and especially once that Dondozo doesn't have any of its boosts on the field, Golden Go is going to have a little bit of a good time there.
And it's way more justifiable running Thunder when you do have access to Drizzle. You do have the Pelipper on Bass's side of the field, so that's going to be able to make that Thunder 100% accurate as opposed to the 70% accuracy it would normally have. Thunderbolts would be without the rain, much more consistent, but Thunder, because you are able to get that consistency of the 100% accuracy, then you're going to be able to do a lot more damage.
Right, exactly. And, going back to the team on Marcus's side of the field, you've got a lot of options there. But in the meantime, we have actually got a few little achievements coming up on your screen. Bars on the left there with the London Open Top 16. That's a really good tournament to have, been able to get to the top 16 of, because that means going into this event, Bars has a considerable number of championship points already. Yeah,
already on the way to the qualification for the World Championships in Japan this year. Always going to be very nice to have championship points going forward into the tournaments the way you do want to still be getting the qualification. If you haven't got it yet, you still need to be racking up those points. Having some security of, I have already achieved some achievement points, it's going to be very nice for him, and especially because he's on track to getting some more, especially with that 4-0 record.
Exactly that, and you can see Barz's team on the screen now. That Palafin we were already talking about, the Salamence being that offensive Life Orb set that is becoming a little bit more prevalent. We've actually seen quite a lot of today, and of course that Thunder there on the Golden Go. But I think really importantly, we've got that Pormot backup as well. Both the fake out to support Barz's team getting set up, supporting that Palafin being able to switch in and out and get itself going, but also the Revival Blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Revival Blessing going to be able to be very impactful here, going to be able to effectively get 4.5 Pokemon on your team as well, so going to be very impactful in this game for sure. We can see Marcus's team over here as well is actually going to be opting for a body press Dondozo here, especially with the stretchy Tatsugiri. That's going to give the speed boosts for the Dondozo. You could have opted for the stretchy one, and the droopy one is the defense boosting one. We've got the stretchy one here. Droopy one would have given the defense boost to Dondozo. That would have comboed quite nicely with the body press, but actually opting for the speed boost instead, while still just going for regular old body presses.
Yeah, but I quite like that, because body press is a really good coverage move. It gives you a different kind of layer of offensive pressure that you can't remove. We've seen the importance of Intimidate come back into the forefront. Early in the metagame, it wasn't really too popular, but nowadays Intimidate is really, really popular. And so, okay, if you're going to go for those speed boosts, you're weak to having your attack lowered and lowered and lowered by those Taurus and other Pokemon. So now, with the body press, because it's not lowering its defense, it's still going to be doing quite a lot of damage.
Yeah, that's a really good shout on the ignoring the Intimidates. I can't really think off the top of my head anything's just going to be consistently reducing defenses. So if you get those +2 defense boosts, you're going to be able to consistently do that damage output with not much mitigation of that damage outside of maybe the haze on the Palafin, but that was going to stop the attack boost anyway. So yeah, it's a very interesting tech coming out, especially with the fact that it's not the droopy Tatsugiri. You would have assumed it would normally be, so opting for the speed boost instead. But if you've got enough defense to be able to do some significant damage to the body press, then the speed might be the way to go, so you just move them first anyway.
Exactly that, and with that rest set and the Chesto Berry, yeah, eventually you're going to be doing enough damage as we go into game one. We're going to be seeing that Palafin coming out right from the start. I'm really happy to see that. 2 Golden Goes on the field and a Meowscarada coming out for Marcus.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if it had Flip Turn, it probably wouldn't even want to go for it at this point in the face of the Meowscarada. You could just easily go for a Flower Trick into the Palafin. While it still isn't in its hero form, it would still be doing increased damage to just the zero form of the Palafin. Probably enough to pick up the KO. So the Palafin is likely to be scared out here, wanting to get that ability activated and avoid any Flower Tricks. but then at the same time, that becomes incredibly telegraphed. Palafins absolutely want to switch out, and this one is very much threatened. It kind of needs to switch out, so that could be something that Markus could be reading into here, because of the potential of the Palafin switch in that was so obvious and is happening. Could potentially just be targeting the Golden Go instead.
It could be. I mean, you know, with the Golden Go on the field, on Bars's side of the field, you've got to still be a little bit careful of it. Amoonguss, though, going to be coming onto the field to maybe try to protect that Golden Go, and actually really quite a good switch into Meowscarada, certainly. Golden Go on what looks like Bars's side of the field is going for its Terra Steel and increasing the damage that it's going to be. Oh no, apologies, on Markus's side of the field. And going to be increasing the damage that it's going to be doing with Make It Rain. Oh, sorry, I was one player too soon.
You were still correct.
I was there. I was there. That was foreshadowing. We've got the Golden Go, of course, on Bars's side of the field as well, going for its Steel-type Terror there. Critical hit knockoff from the Meowscarada, taking away those choice specs. And the Make It Rain, importantly, coming out from Markus's Golden Go first. Oh my God, Golden Go on Bars's side of the field hangs on with a sliver and will be able to reply with its own Make It Rain onto Markus's side of the field. What a turn.
Absolutely there. And the Meowscarada getting that critical hit meant that the Golden Go on Bars's side of the field was very, very close to being knocked out, but not quite enough. Able to respond with the Make It Rain itself. The Meowscarada is down to its focus sash now. The Golden Go on Markus's side of the field is brought to just above half HP as well. So that was still a very interesting turn coming out for both players. The Amoonguss, a very obvious switch in for the Flower Tricks that would want to go into the opposing Palafin. Going to be quad resisting that very nicely. But it's just taken so much damage from the Make It Rain on the way in. That's likely going to be in range of a knockoff into the Amoonguss, followed up by even the -1 Make It Rain from the opposing Golden Go. So, and the Golden Go on Bars's side of the field is going to be KO to pretty much anything at this point. So, yeah, it still looks like it came out on top for Markus that turn. But you did have to consider that the Palafin is now in its hero form waiting in the back, so you do sacrifice these initial turns when you're playing Palafin so that you can get that endgame going.
Exactly, and Amoonguss playing on the defensive right now. Knockoff coming from the Meowscarada, finishing the job onto that Golden Go on Bars's side of the field. Going to be going back to Bars, and no more damage coming out for Markus's side of the field. Instead, a nasty plot coming out from this Golden Go, just making sure it's going to be going and doing as much damage as possible, because now, instead of being at one stage of decreased special attack, it's going to be sitting at one stage of increased special attack, and that's definitely where you want it to be.
Absolutely. That was a really, really nice nasty plot from Markus, and entirely safe as well, because the Amoonguss wouldn't have been able to redirect the Meowscarada from going from the knockoff into the opposing Golden Go, and with the good as gold ability, then it's going to be immune to the spores, so it was basically a very free nasty plot. There was no way that Bus could really stop that, given the fact that the Golden Go was definitely going to be threatened with the KO from the Meowscarada, and there was nothing to stop that. However, now we do have the Palafin joining the field. That is what Bus is playing for. He is trying to be able to get the Palafin with its hero form activated to do the massive damage it does need to do. Meowscarada has been brought down to its focus sash. It is in range of Jet Punch, so you'll just be able to easily pick up the KO in that regard. You do still need to contend with the Golden Go that is going to be able to go for a +1 Make It Rain, or even potentially a Shadow Ball as well if you're just ignoring the threat of the Rage Powder that could come out from the Amoonguss as well.
Exactly that. And yeah, now that this Palafin is actually on the field, it's going to be putting enough pressure. I think that really the question is whether or not Markus goes for Protect on either Pokemon on his side of the field. We'll have to see, as Amoonguss does leave the field in favor of that Pelipper, even further boosting up the damage potential from that Palafin, and a Jet Punch going to be knocking out that Meowscarada from 1 HP. No help from the rain needed there, but with this Golden Go, didn't go for a Protect on Markus' side. Is just going to be a Make It Rain coming out and going to be doing so much damage. Oh my God! It's sometimes you think with these Golden Goes, it's kind of not really fair how much damage it does.
Yeah, what is a resistance? that's over half damage to both of the water types. Yeah, that nasty plot really, really crucial in doing that much damage. If it didn't have the nasty plot, it would have been a -1 previously from the Make It Rain. So that would have just done a little bit of chip damage to both of the opposing Pokemon. Now they're in range of pretty much anything. Now you've got to commit at least one of them going for a Jet Punch into either Pokemon. The Golden Go would definitely be in range of the Jet Punch at this point. Sylveon probably would survive, given the fact that you can't go for the Terra Water anymore because you've used that already on the Golden Go. It'd probably have to be a Wave Crash, And this is the Mystic Water Palafin, so it's not choice locked into the regular choice bands item that's on it as well. You can switch up to go for that Wave Crash, and Wave Crash may even be enough to KO the opposing Sylveon, but then you still have to contend with the Golden Go that likely outspeeds the opposing Pelipper and can just go for a Shadow Ball to KO either Pokemon. It's unlikely to go for a Make It Rain. It would be very brave for it to do so in the face of the potential Wide Guard that could come out from the Pelipper, and the fact that the Palafin took just over half damage from the Make It Rain with the extra drop back to neutral. It may not be in range of that attack anymore, but it would likely still be in range of the opposing Shadow Ball.
No damage coming out onto the Palafin at this turn, though. Only a Protect coming out from that slot. Shadow Ball, as you rightly called out there, Jamie, going up into the Pelipper, knocking it out quite effectively there and sending it back to Bars. And well, we'll have to see what the Sylveon does, because, yeah, Terra Blast coming out there probably would have been enough to knock out that Palafin. So kind of a good Protect, but you've lost a Pokemon there in Pelipper for one. So, Jamie, what do you think that the combination of Amoonguss and Palafin can do here to come back into this game?
Palafin is almost certainly going to be able to survive and make it rain at this point, and you can go for a Rage Powder to keep it safe from the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball should be enough to pick up the KO on the Palafin. Terra Blast likely would be as well, and it's the fact that it's a single target move, able to bypass the Wide Guard on the previous turn as well. The unique interaction that it is actually still a Fairy type attack, getting the use of the Pixelate as well. But now you can just switch up to your Hyper Voice and your Make It Rain, because Pelipper is no longer on the field.
And a Wave Crash coming out from that Palafin is enough to pick up the knockout onto the Sylveon. Probably not a surprise there, as you mentioned earlier, but that Palafin is dangerously low, and Make It Rain is definitely going to be enough to knock out that Palafin from this range. And actually, the Amoonguss as well, because, hey, why not?
Yeah, it didn't really matter at that point. The Amoonguss went for the Rage Pad. It wouldn't have been able to do anything back to the opposing Golden Go. You'd have just gone for another, even -1 single target Make It Rain would have done the job afterwards as well. So, yeah, the fact that it had to go for Wave Crash the Palafin into the Sylveon in the end game, Jet Punch wouldn't, it really wouldn't have been strong enough. It would have been really close, given that Palafin is so strong, but you have to go for Wave Crash. That means you take all that recoil, and now you're suddenly in Make It Rain range. So, yeah, the fact that you had to take the recoil, you'd have almost certainly survived that Make It Rain otherwise, but then you'd have allowed the Sylveon to just survive and get off a Hyper Voice. So Markus did really pin Bus in that endgame.
He did, and I really like the way that Markus didn't go for that Dondozo-Tatsugiri combination. It probably would have been kind of okay in that sort of matchup. Certainly, being a water type would have resisted things like Palafin and such, but would have been susceptible to haze that Markus would have seen on Bars's team sheet there. So kind of nicely played into the matchup and the format that we're playing, where you kind of know what your opponent has on offer to come up against you there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it may not even need to go for the Dondozo at all in this game. It seems like that was a perfectly valid strategy coming out from Markus, and it is down to Bus to adapt to this. You can go for the Palafin strategy once again. It would seem like it would be potentially effective, especially because the main damage dealer from Markus' side of the field ended up being that Golden Go. You do resist to Make It Rain. So if maybe the Palafin positions itself slightly better so that it is able to just take the knockout on the Golden Go with the Jet Punch, that might be a bit more effective. The fact that it had to go for the Meowscarada, because Meowscarada would have been overgrowed and like flower tricking the Palafin, that's definitely a KO. You have to attack the Meowscarada.
Yeah.
And that just freed up the Golden Go to just launch off all of the Make It Rains after it had Nasty Plots doing so much damage.
I think that's why Meowscarada is so really viable in this metagame. Not just the ability to ignore Rage Powder and such, but also just the amount of damage that it can dish out, and especially with these Focus Sash sets and that Overgrow, the reason why these Meowscaradas do run Overgrow on those sort of sets, rather than Protean, which would have, got like the odd bit of extra damage on something like a U-turn. Instead, you kind of remove one of your same type attack bonuses from your side of the field, and it doesn't quite work as well as just getting that extra boost on your grass type attacks.
Yeah, you do tend to really only run Protean if you are choice locked, whether that's like going to be the choice bands, because then you are committing to one move, so you might as well get the same type of attack bonus on that move if it happens to be not be a grass or a dark type. But Focus Sash, very, very nice here. It did go down to that Focus Sash, so it did come into play, and then it just took away the attention from the Golden Go that was able to just have free reign in the field.
One thing that's quite interesting actually in that matchup that I would like your opinion on, Jamie, is that we didn't actually see the third Pokemon, or the fourth Pokemon, should I say, from Marcus's side of the field. So if you're Baz and you're trying to adjust, what would you expect that fourth Pokemon to be, and what do you think that Baz should be thinking about going into Game 2?
Well, you've got to assume it's not the Dondozo if you haven't seen the Tatsugiri. Tatsugiri itself is usually used without the other partner Pokemon in the Dondozo than Dondozo is without the Tatsugiri. You only tend to run it on the maybe Yawn sets on the Dondozo, which isn't the case in this one. So it could have potentially been the Tatsugiri waiting in the back, which would make a lot of sense because it does 4 times resist the water type attacks that would be coming out. So it's going to be able to shrug off the wave crashes and the jet punches. I say that, Palafin's still very strong, and Tatsugiri is not actually that bulky. I say shrug off, but survive is probably the correct word there. But yeah, we're going into this second game here, so we've got that Meowscarada and Golden Goat once again for Marcus' side of the field, but there is a bit of a switch up. You have got the Palafin coming out for Buster's side of the field, still wants to get that hero form, but you've got the Pawmot now. So the Pawmot is going to be able to put on fake out pressure onto that Meowscarada, which could potentially break the focus sash, and if it does, it can follow up with a close combat KO, and it's also a Pokemon that does also resist the Make It Rain.
It does. I kind of wonder here on the combination of a fake out and a wave crash coming out from this Palafin, whether that would be enough to knock out the Meowscarada. We're definitely not going to find out this turn, as it does indeed switch into the Pelipper. Wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of a fake out coming out here from this Pawmot into the Meowscarada. But no, nothing coming out here, just a Flower Trick into the Pelipper slot. So nice damage there, but not enough to pick up the one-hit knockout. And Double Shock comes out from the Pawmot onto the Golden Go, using up all of its electricity, removing its resistance to those Steel-type moves. Doesn't actually matter in this occasion because of that Focus Sash on the Pawmot, as Make It Rain does do, again, just so much damage there. Not enough to knock out the Pelipper, though.
Yeah, too much damage, I think, is the correct word there, because both Pokemon are down into the red after that one attack. The Flower Trick, of course, doing some significant damage to the opposing Pelipper as well. But now both Pokemon should be in range of just a double KO. You can go for a single target attack into the Pawmot to avoid the potential wide guards that could be coming out from the Pelipper. And you are Life Orb on the Golden Go. You can switch up your move. You can go for Shadow Ball into the Pelipper for the KO. So this is still a very, very strong position for Marcus there, for getting so much damage on the board and just putting everything in range of the attacks here. There's no protects coming out because the Pawmot can't protect and the Pelipper can't protect. So this was basically just a guaranteed double KO unless there was switches, and it doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, not particularly ideal for Bars's side of the field, as Flower Trick followed by Shadow Ball, not risking any wide guard shenanigans coming out from the Pelipper. Same as game 1. I think Bars knows that Marcus isn't going to be fooled by those sort of particular scenarios, and double KO coming out here. But the double KO does allow for Palafin to come back out unscathed, as well as the Golden Go on Bars's side of the field. So, okay, you've gone 4-2 down, but this could equalize very, very quickly.
Yeah, it definitely could. Palafin is definitely one of the Pokemon that is able to make that comeback, because you do sacrifice that initial momentum to try and get it in the end game instead, because Palafin needs to switch out, needs to switch back in. But then it becomes so strong that it absolutely still can snowball games all on its own, as so long as it's got that hero form. The only awkward thing at the moment is the Meowscarada's Focus Sash has not been broken yet.
Yes.
So the Golden Go's taken so much damage, but Meowscarada still can survive any attack that would be coming its way. That means it can just very safely get a Flower Trick off into the Palafin. You do know it can protect. Most Palafins can't, but this one can, and you do know that. So maybe you just go for the attack into the Golden Go instead, expecting the protect. But in fact, actually, this Palafin, it's actually going to make itself somewhat resistant to that Flower Trick with that Grass Terror.
Grass Terror is the perfect way to get back into this game. Probably going to ignore the Meowscarada now, that it doesn't have to fear the Flower Trick quite so much, and that's exactly what we see. Golden Go on Marcus' side of the field is going to be able to go down to that Jab Punch. Make It Rain follow-up, doing no damage. Fair play. We've had too much damage from the Make It Rain. Now we've had no damage from the Make It Rain. I love that. And it's now down to see how this interaction goes, because now that the Palafin on Bars's side of the field has gone for its Terror, that means that Golden Go can't, and therefore it's going to be weak to the knockoff from the Meowscarada.
So it will be very close if the Golden Go is able to be KO'd by that knockoff. So the fact that there's Sylveon and Armourouge waiting in the back for Marcus, we get the sneak peek of that. that means that the Palafin can actually put on a huge amount of offensive pressure on what is left on the opposing side of the field. The fact that it's grass type now means that it resists the Flower Trick. It can take on the Meowscarada. So really, really smart choice of the Terra there. Not going for the common water type just to get those extra damage outputs and get those KOs that you wouldn't have done otherwise. Going for a more of a defensive Terra with that grass has really come into play here very, very nicely, because it would have almost certainly been game over if it was just that water Terra, because then you can just get a Flower Trick at some point into the Palafin. But now, even if you do, it's not going to be doing too much damage. So with the Sylveon that is joining the field, and it does have access to the Terra Fire, you can go for a Terra Blast Fire into the opposing Palafin, but you need to kind of stall out these rain turns first for that to be the most effective.
As Jet Punch goes into the Meowscarada, knocking off those choice specs from the Golden Go there. We'll have to see if Make It Rain is still going to be doing enough damage to knock out the Sylveon, and it does survive on just a few hit points. Not completely close so that you'd be like, whoa, hang on a second, this is not what I wanted to see. He's going to be able to launch off a Hyper Voice, but the Golden Go does survive with a Sliver. A Sylveon activates that Throat Spray, having shouted at its opponent, and is going to be able to go to an increased stage of special attack.
Yeah, that's gonna be very, very crucial. If that Golden Go would have been KO'd, that would have likely been Markus's game at that point, because you have to attack one of the Pokemon. You'd probably be able to KO either Pokemon, whether it's the Armourouge that is joining the field now, or the Sylveon, but then the other one would have got an attack off into the opposing Palafin. So actually, it shrugged off the Hyper Voice somewhat, but then it would have been a single target Hyper Voice at +1, which would have been enough to pick up the KO, and then it may have been a Protect Mine game. But now the fact that the Golden Go has survived on Barca's side of the field, that means that you may need to commit something like a Quick Attack to be able to KO the Golden Go, and it might even not be able to KO it. Just a little bit in the red, so I might be able to survive that attack. If that would be able to KO, then that would once again turn it into the 2v1, but that's an extra turn that the Palafin has to be able to just go on the offensive. The fact that Markus had his Terra available and didn't go for it, the Sylveon could have turned into a Fire type to resist the Make It Rain, but then it would have been weak to the Jet Punches that could come out. So it's still very awkward, especially with the Armourouge being the Dark type instead. A lot of them do opt for Grass. Grass would have been brilliant here to take on the opposing Palafin, but just being Dark means you're neutral against it, and it's still going to be able to do so much damage to you because the rain is still up.
Exactly that. Dark type Terra is the move of choice for that Armourouge, so we'll have to see if the Wave Crush is the move of choice there for Buzz, or whether it is indeed the Jet Punch. Sylveon going for the Detect, protecting itself from any more damage, and Wave Crush going into the Armourouge is enough to pick up the knockout in the rain. What a powerful attack there coming from this Palafin, and going to be knocking that Armourouge right back down, right back to Markus. And now it's a 2v1. Both Pokemon on Barca's side of the field have options to be able to KO this Sylveon from this range.
Yeah, absolutely. It would have been interesting to see if that Golden Go would have been in Quick Attack range. It would have been very close if it were, but given the fact that the Wave Crash was still just a straight-up one-shot on the opposing Armourouge, meant that Palafin was likely going to be able to take that game anyway. So, yeah, like we said, that it seemed like Markus had the driving seat in the first two turns, but as soon as the Palafin hits the field, that's the entire point of the Pokemon. Yeah. You don't do damage in the initial part. You're trying to reposition to get that snowball in the end game, and we saw a perfect example of that as well. And I think that came out from the Grass Terra. Yes. I think if it would have been the regular, well, I say regular, the most common type of water, because you usually want to get that extra damage output, because then it gets quite ridiculous in the rain. Pretty strong is good enough, it seems. So then you can get the Grass Terra typing, and then you can take on the Meowscaradas pretty comfortably.
I do agree with that assessment. Doing damage is good. Doing damage is very good, especially when you're not taking damage. I think that's like really the key here.
Yes.
Is that Grass Terra was able to create an endgame position that would otherwise not be available to Bars. So yeah, really exciting to be able to take this game to a game 3 and see how these players adjust now going in. So Jamie, what are your thoughts? What do both players need to do to adjust going into Game 3?
I think if the Armourouge would have been either the Tatsugiri or the Dondozo instead, then that might have been a bit more effective for Markus. Even the Dondozo without the Tatsugiri would have been pretty good in that endgame, because the Golden Go was locked into Make It Rain, so that wouldn't have been doing too much damage. And the Palafin's still not doing much damage at all with the Water-type attacks. You'd slowly be able to just body press away and be able to take the game. Tatsugiri would have also resisted both of the attacks that come out as well. The quad resistance from the water types and the Make It Rain would have been resisted also. So if it wasn't the Armourouge, that would have been a much closer game and may have been Markus's game in that game. But bringing the Armourouge instead, being in range of just being one shot by the wave crash ended up not being the play there. So may need to consider one of the other Pokemon. Armourouge seems like it would be pretty reasonable against some of the Pokemon on Barca's side of the field, but not when you're facing down that Palafin, especially without the grass Terra typing that is usually on that Armourouge.
And of course, the rain that goes with having the Pelipper on the field for Barca's side of the field. I really liked how Barca did approach Game 2. I was unsure as to whether the Pormok coming out initially, especially when it wasn't really too effective against the Meowscarada and the Golden Go, was going to be the Pokemon of choice. I kind of would have liked to see it that a little bit further in the back once Pokemon had taken a little bit of damage. Maybe that's what we're going to be seeing this time as Palafin and Amoonguss lead out in Game 3 for Bars. And of course, Meowscarada and Golden Go tried and tested for Markus.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do want to be switching out that Palafin once again. The Amoonguss can go for actually very respectable damage into the opposing Meowscarada with the Pollen Puff. That would bring it down to its Focus Sash. We've seen it do so much damage to opposing Meowscaradas as in previous games as well. But again, you're still in the same position. You are very telegraphed to be switching out with the Palafin at this point. You are switching out with the Palafin at this point. So then it just becomes a bit predictable, but that is the point. You're trying to get the position for the Palafin, so it's okay to make these sacrifices to take this damage that we've seen in the first game. Went down to red HP in the first turn of the game too. We'll see if that happens here.
Right, as a Flower Trick goes into the Palafin slot, does hit into the Pelipper, doing about 50% damage. But we do see the Pollen Puff coming out from the Amoonguss, going to be knocking that Meowscarada down to its Focus Sash, and that's going to be crucial coming out into the later turns of this game. The position that you were talking about setting up there, talking about setup, that Golden Go is looking pretty dangerous right now.
Absolutely. You're going to be able to two-shot the Pelipper with that Flower Trick. The first one was able to do it. Now it's definitely going to do it. Now you're in Overgrow range as well. And then that would turn the Make It Rain into a single target attack into the Amoonguss. And at +2, that's definitely KO in the Amoonguss as well. There's no switching as well. So you just need to contend with the opposing Pelipper that could still White Guard, and even if it gets KO'd, then the White Guard would still be effective in stopping the Amoonguss. And I don't think the +2 Shadow Ball probably won't be enough on the Amoonguss. It is with the Life Orb, and Golden Go is very strong, but if it's not able to KO, then that might be a bit awkward because the Meowscarada would have been KO'd to Pollen Puff, but instead the Amoonguss is just going to protect itself here.
Yeah, no matter how strong that Golden Go is, it cannot break through that Protect. The Flower Trick is going to be able to knock out the Pelipper, so Amoonguss sticking on the field. The Make It Rain potentially, Nasty Plot coming out from the Golden Go. Excellent play there by Markus. He's going to be boosting himself up, and that's 4 stages of increased special attack. And I don't think, doesn't matter what type that Palafin is, I think it's really under threat now.
Absolutely. Make It Rain surely just KOs the rest of Barca's team at this point. +4 is quite ridiculous levels of damage output, and it's a really effective play as well. It was entirely safe. You don't need to KO the Amoonguss that turn if it did end up not going for the Protect, because all it could do, it could KO the Meowscarada. That would be pretty effective, but it can't stop the Golden Go. It was guaranteed to get that +4 without taking something like a Pollen Puff for 1 damage. So then it would have been very good here. And it is drawing the attention to the Golden Go. So if the Palafin wants to survive this turn, it kind of has to target the Golden Go. And then that means that the Meowscarada freed up to go for an Overgrow Flower Trick into the Palafin. Even though it's going for the Grass Terra type, that would still do some significant damage.
It is, and probably going to have to do it 2 times in a row, so to speak. It depends how these are trained. I believe we saw the Palafin going before the Golden Go in previous games, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. Knockoff, though, is going to be able to knock off that Mystic Water. Not going to be enough damage mitigation to stop that Golden Go from being knocked out. But Palafin has taken so much damage for its troubles. Going to be healing it up, though. Great Pollen Puff there coming out from the Amoonguss on Barca's side of the field, healing up that Palafin to about 3/4 of its health. And I kind of like where the Palafin's sitting right now.
Yeah, Palafin's actually in a pretty strong position at this point. The Golden Go not being faster than the opposing Palafin was pretty impactful there. If the Golden Go gets off an attack, that's a double KO. Definitely a +4. It's a double KO. So the fact that it outsped with the Wave Crash and is able to pick up the knockout, even a Protect on the Golden Go wouldn't have helped that turn, because you get the knockoff into the Palafin, but it gets healed back to full HP because of the Pollen Puff, because that's going to be able to, if you do target the Meowscarada as well, predicting the Protect. So yeah, now the Armourouge is still going to be joining the field once again. It's not going to be able to take on the Palafin. Actually, the fact that the Mystical Water's been knocked off, potentially, Now it might potentially. The rain is still up, so we saw that the Mystic Water wave crash in the rain was definitely enough to pick up the KO on the Armor Rouge. The fact that the Mystic Water has gone now may be the deciding factor. Is that still going to be strong enough? You've still got the massive boost of damage in the rain. If you do turn into the Dark type and you're able to survive, that combination may be able to pick up the KO on the opposing Palafin. And if the Amoonguss wants to keep it safe from the damage from the Armor Rouge, it needs to go for the Rage Powders, but it's going to still take a lot of damage from the Psychics. If you want to go for the Pollen Puff to try and recover up enough HP, and you're going to be, the Armor Rouge as well. Actually, no, it's the safety goggles, isn't it? So it's not going to be able to ignore the Amoonguss completely. So you do need to target down this Armor Rouge. And it's not actually the Armor Rouge going for the Terra type as well. It's going to be the Meowscarada instead.
It is, and looking probably to get some Flower Trick damage is going to be, after the knockoff, the most powerful move that Meowscarada can go for. And there's some mind games going on here, because that Protect is stopping the Palafin going into that Armor Rouge, as we were talking about, being the probable play on Bars' side of the field. And look at that damage. Terra is very, very strong and makes such a big difference. Wave Crash going into that Protect, so Markus thinking along your wavelength, Jamie, there, and not taking any damage. But Pollen Puff is going to be healing it back up to nearly full. It looked like that Flower Trick did just over half.
Yeah, and it's not going to be able to do the damage here, because we already know it's guaranteed to critical hit. You can't critical hit on a critical hit to get the extra damage. So that's the damage it's going to be doing to the opposing Palafin, and it wasn't enough. It was really, really strong for a resisted hit, but not going to be able to do enough here. And now you can't go for the Terra on the Armor Rouge. You can't try and survive by going for the Dark Terra. Instead, going to be switching into the Sylveon here. Again, Sylveon might now be able to survive. It'll be close. The Mystic Water is gone. If the Sylveon can survive and the Wave Crash recoil KOs the opposing Palafin before the Pollen Puff can happen, that might be quite impactful here. And it's again, doing the damage. It's down to the red. Wave Crash would KO the Palafin to its own recoil here.
Yeah, and Wave Crash is exactly what we're going to be seeing. Probably going to be enough to knock out the Sylveon in one, and is going to be knocking out that Sylveon there. We'll see if the Pollen Puff was targeting into the Meowscarada, though, instead. If you're going to be locking into Wave Crash after a move that you know is going to do significant damage, I would expect Bars to be targeting that Meowscarada rather than self-targeting. That's exactly what we see. So a double KO there for Bars, but a single KO there for Markus. So now it's going to be that Armor Rouge with a little bit of rain left against Amoonguss and whatever else Bars has in the back.
Yeah, and if it's going to be that Golden Go, you just need to be able to stall out the rain, and then potentially Armor Cannon is going to be able to KO. There is the Golden Go. So if you can just go for the Protect, stall out a little bit, you've got the safety goggles, you're going to be able to ignore the Amoonguss. Yeah, Pollen Puff will do reasonable damage, but you just need to be able to knock out the Golden Go in one shot here. You
do, but unfortunately not going to be able to protect itself from something like a Shadow Ball coming out from Bars, and we know that it's the choice specs that it's carrying, so it really does come down to how these two Pokemon are trained speed-wise as to which Pokemon is going off first.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be the main decider for this game, because you're still going to be trying to stall out the rain. The rain is still once again on the field, but Golden Go is going to be able to outspeed. That is holding the choice specs. It's going to do significant damage and just pick up the KO on the opposing Armor Rouge. So that is going to be game, set, and match for Bus there. It seemed like Markus had the driving seat for multiple turns in that game, and then just the Palafin swings that momentum so far around.
It's just so powerful, and with use of that Grass Terror, being able to stop it being knocked out by the Meowscarada with that Flower Trick was so impactful, because as soon as it's a Grass type, kind of all of the damage that Markus had to be able to deal with that Palafin kind of dried up quite quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. The Grass Terror was just very impactful in that game. The Water Terror would not have been very effective there. The Meowscarada would have been able to deal with the Palafin pretty comfortably, because you got the Overgrow pretty early on with going down to the Focus Sash, and we saw how much damage even the resisted Flower Trick did when you terrored as well. So it definitely needed to be the Grass Terror there, and it's just a very nice team building from Bus coming out here with that Grass Terror on the Palafin.
Yeah, can we just take just a small moment to talk about how impactful that Amoonguss was in Game 3. I've not seen really since Dynamax formats last year where Amoonguss was on the field and going for Pollen Puff so many times in a row and just making sure that the Pokemon next to it was healed up. And yeah, that was a really good thing to see coming out in this format specifically.
And it seemed like maybe the Amoonguss was not in the greatest position, especially in those first few turns. Meowscarada ignores it. Golden Go really ignores it and is able to set up in its face twice. It went for 2 nasty pots. It was going to KO every single Pokemon on both side of the field. And it seemed like that was allowed because Amoonguss was on the field. But then it was able to reposition, get the Palafin coming back in. And then Amoonguss's job was to keep that Palafin still alive to be able to go for those wave crashes. So, yeah, actually really, really impactful, even though it initially didn't seem like it would be.
No, not at all. Especially like, yeah, so many Pokemon on Markus's field just ignoring that Amoonguss. But that little mushroom always finds a way. We'll be able to talk to Bars about that in just a moment. We're going to be cutting to a short break where we'll be back with an interview with your winner from the last round, round 5, Bars.
Welcome back, Pokemon trainers. I am joined with the winner of the previous round 5, Bas van der Heijden. How are you feeling after that fantastic game that we've just seen?
Really good. I was really nervous before because it's my first time being on stream in a tournament, and yeah, I'm really happy to have been able to beat such a fantastic player.
Yeah, absolutely. It was
Markus.
And it was just a fantastic game as well. So really,
Thank
really
you.
back and forth. The Palafin really coming out strong in that game.
Yeah.
We've seen it previously, often to opt for the Terra Water instead, just to really maximize the damage output.
Yeah.
But we saw how effective that Grass Terra was on the Palafin in this game. Tell me why you decided to run that instead of the Water type.
Yeah, I'm not going to claim that any of these ideas were mine. I took a lot of inspiration from what I saw at San Diego. And I didn't really play that much Series 1 before that, so I didn't really have a team. And I saw the success of Rain, and I thought, hey, looks kind of cool. And those teams had Grass, obviously, for not taking super effective damage from Flower Track and being able to ignore Amoonguss, which are 2 big things. And I just took that, and yeah, I really wouldn't have wanted Water in most of my prep and tournament sets.
Yeah, Grass was very impactful in that game for sure as well. Yeah, we see Palafin paired with Pelipper very often because you want that rain boost as well. You do have the Damprock on your Pelipper. Not a very common item that we've seen in previous formats. It seems to be picking up a little bit in this one. Why did you decide to run the Damprock on the Pelipper?
Same thing with Palafin. I just took teams that I saw had success. Those had Damprock. I tried stuff like Eject Button. I had Citrus Berry at a Life Orb at some point, but yeah, Damprock, the extra turns really made a difference and made me able to sack Pelipper in the early game and still have enough rain turns to really sweep my opponent's team with the Palafin. And I think we saw that in this set as well. It really paid off.
Yeah, Palafin definitely was able to sweep. And it seemed like you maybe lost momentum in the first few turns of the game because you obviously have to switch out the Palafin. And especially in that game 3, it seemed like Amoonguss wasn't really doing anything. The Meowscarada ignores it. The Golden Go really ignores it. It got to +4. Like, what were you thinking when the Golden Go was that set up?
It was fine.
It was fine. Apparently it was fine.
What I needed to do was get my Palafin into a position where it was able to not take too much damage from the partner, break the sash, which was important, which I did on 1. And then I could just OHKO literally everything on the team, because against this team I don't know if you saw, but I have haste on the Palafin, so the Dondozo combination doesn't really come here. So I was able to get my Palafin to a position I didn't really care, because I could just one-shot the Golden Go. So +4.
Yeah, and something else interesting about your Palafin, you're not opting to run Flip Turn. Flip Turn is a very common way of getting your Zerateria. So why did you end up dropping that for Protect instead?
I really love pivoting moves, so this was a very difficult decision for me. The reason was that I just like the flexibility that this move offers. I know you're not a big fan of Protect, but I am.
Fair enough.
And it really allows me to just position better with the Amoonguss, or just get a turn where I can really take advantage of having Protect, and I liked it more than Flip Turn, although the lead makes it a little bit more awkward, because Flip Turn sort of has a little bit of pressure, and I have no pressure at all.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And yeah, congratulations once again for winning this game. You're doing so well so far.
5-0
going into this tournament. How are you feeling for the rest of the tournament going forward?
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to playing some more games. I've been having a really good time so far. I like piloting this team, which also helps.
Yep.
I hope I'll be able to make top cut and maybe go even further.
You are getting very close at this point. You're only a couple of games away, so,
Yes.
so it's definitely on the horizon. So just before we conclude this interview, is there anyone you want to give any final shout-outs to?
Yeah, first off, my girlfriend, she is with me to most of my tournaments, and yeah, I really like her support. It's amazing. All my friends that help me prepare, all my friends that are just with me here, we're having a great time together. Specifically, I would like to thank Apai. He's a co-manager of mine, MPA. You know MPA? Yeah. He has really helped me with prepping this team. I also got a lot of inside information from a lot of the rain users in San Diego, so I'd also like to thank them. And just all my friends, they know who they are.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and congratulations once again
Thank you.
for an amazing game going forward,
Thank
and
you.
very close to that top cut. So only a couple of games away. So
Yes.
we'll have to see how that's going to be going forward in the tournament. And speaking of going forward into the tournament, we are going to be getting to a very short break here, and we'll be back very shortly with round 6 of the Liverpool Regionals.